Okay, my name is Dennis Gill with the Americans of Wartime Experience. Today's date is 4 March 2022, and I am conducting an interview in Northern Virginia with Jan Fitzsimmons. I said that right.
You did.
Perfect. Okay, ma'am, just give us a little bit of background. Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Well, I am an Air Force dependent, so
Okay.
all over the place. I was born in Mars Hill, Maine,
Okay.
and grew up everywhere. Went to high school and college in North Carolina, then joined the Navy and lived everywhere. And I currently reside in Arlington, Virginia.
Is this where you call home?
You know, that's the hardest question for somebody like me to answer.
Right.
So for a long time, I called North Carolina home, but now I think I will call Virginia home.
Right.
It feels right.
Yeah. Where did you go to high school?
North Carolina.
Okay, and you graduated from college there as well?
I went to University of North Carolina,
Okay.
yes, Chapel Hill, graduated 1978.
Yep.
And then in the Navy, I got my master's degree at Naval Postgraduate School, Monterey, California.
Why did you join the Navy?
Couldn't find a job when I graduated from college, which was seriously one of the reasons. But because I grew up as a military dependent, I was familiar with the military. Wanted nothing to do with it when I graduated from college initially,
Right.
but then I realized it might be something good to do for 4 or 5 years and beef up the resume and see what happens.
Right.
And I stayed in for 22.
22. What did you do in the military?
It was communications. Now, when I joined the military in 1981, very few, well, no combat platforms were open to women back then, which includes ships, airplanes, and submarines, etc.
Okay.
So I wanted to stay as operational as I could. So I went into the communications field, which evolved into the information technology field, which ended up the information warfare field. And yes, when I went to the communications school in Newport, Rhode Island after I got commissioned, I was the first class there that did not have to take Morse code. So that I saw a lot of evolution in that field in the time I was in the Navy.
And how did you come to be in Northern Virginia?
I retired here and didn't know really where else to go. Was able to get a job with a defense contractor initially. Did that for a few years, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, took a year off, and then General Vought called me out of the blue, and I got the job here at the Military Women's Memorial.
And what do you do for them?
Well, now I'm part-time. I, for several years, was the deputy director of the memorial itself, and now I work part-time, and I am focused on the volunteer program. So I'm the volunteer coordinator for our organization.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me take you back in time just a little bit to last November, 2021, the flower ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. What was your role in that?
I laid a flower.
Okay.
I was one of the many hundreds that had the honor to do that.
Right. Tell us about that day.
It was actually a beautiful day weather-wise. Initially, we had to make reservations, but that sort of went by the wayside because so many people wanted to do it. So I was able to procure a flower, and I stood in line for, I would say, 45 minutes or so. And it was just exciting to be there. I recognized the significance of that moment. So, and had a chance to chat with the people around me. Yeah, I was by myself in the line. I didn't go with anybody in particular. So I sort of watched the people around me, chatted with a few people. Everybody seemed to be excited about being there. So,
Why was it important for you to be there?
well, I knew the significance of it. You know, having that this was going to be once in a lifetime thing to do. And growing up in the military, my father served in the military, et cetera, and I served in the military. I just recognized the significance of being able to have the honor to get that close to the tomb and lay a flower.
Right. You said you spoke to some people there?
I mean, the kind of chit-chat like you do when you're in an airplane terminal or something like that, or waiting in line anywhere.
Yeah. What did these people have to say? I mean, were they kind of there for the same reason you were?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember any significant conversations, but I got the idea that everybody was excited to be there. Everybody was willing to wait in the line for however long it took and no complaints in that regard, which was really cool. And if I remember correctly, some people were from out of town, like specifically had driven there from other parts of Virginia, West Virginia, to be there. They recognized the significance of it. And I got the idea that some people just weren't aware of it, but were there to visit the cemetery and then took advantage of that opportunity to lay the flower. So,
you think, as someone who has served in the military, do you think the significance was greater for you? I mean, did it mean more to you, do you think? Or?
Well, that's hard to say because initially I would have said yes, but then getting the vibe from the people around me, and I didn't ask specifically, but I took it that not everybody in the line had any connection with the military.
Right.
Probably most did. I get the idea that most people who visit Arlington Cemetery have some sort of connection with the military. So initially I would say yes, it had more significance being in the military, but then after talking with these people or getting the vibe of the people around me, I would say it was significant to everybody. So.
Do you think the tomb still matters 100 years later? Should we still be guarding it?
Yes, I think that is something that is significant to a lot of people who come visit Arlington Cemetery. One of the things that I get to do working at the Women's Memorial itself, which is right outside the cemetery, is talk to a lot of people who come as tourists. Mm-hmm. And always the first question asked is, do you know where the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is? So you can tell that a lot of people who visit the cemetery want to go there first. And I also know that a lot of honor flights on a regular basis come specifically to the cemetery to lay a wreath. So it has a lot of significance to everybody. It's important.
What are some of your takeaways from that day, you personally?
Well, again, I guess the biggest significance was I just recognized what a special opportunity it was, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to get close to the tomb. I wanted to honor not only the unknown soldier in the tomb, but all of those who came before and after. And just to throw in there, for instance, I have been doing a lot of family history research, and as a military person, of course, I'm focused on finding those ancestors that may have participated in any, conflicts. And I have found not only American Revolutionary War members, but Civil War members. And I was thinking about this earlier when I knew I was going to do this interview. One of the Civil War ancestors that I found, who I wrote an article about him, he served in the Union, although he lived in Kentucky, and most of his relatives and neighbors were Southern sympathizers. He went against the grain. He was an Irish immigrant. And he served. He was in his 50s. Unfortunately, he got injured, was discharged with a disability, came home, and about 8 months later committed suicide. And reading that story really grabbed me, because reading the statements and the depositions by the witnesses who helped the widow get a widow's pension by making those statements. PTSD was, it was obvious to me reading these statements that this man had suffered PTSD from all the trauma he went through. And so maybe I didn't think about it on that particular day, but thinking about it afterwards. I mean, he was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in Kentucky. I would not know where it was. And again, all his relatives and friends at that time were Southern sympathizers. It was 1863 when he committed suicide. So maybe in a little way, I laid that flower for him, because the tomb was built specifically at the time to honor the World War I vets, but there are people that came before that sacrificed for this country. So anyway, I might be digressing, but I thought about that earlier, and that has meaning to me too.
Right. If you were in charge of all of this and you got to plan this in the future, would you want to do something like this on a regular basis, or is this a once in a lifetime or once in 100-year event?
I thought about that because that question was asked of me before. And my initial reaction is, no, don't make it a regular event. And that's still my initial belief. Don't make it a regular event because that takes away the significance. But perhaps, because again, I thought about this, my World War II father and mother, born in 1920s and 30s, died in late 1900s and early 2000s. That generation, because of the 100 years, didn't have the opportunity to do something like this if they wanted to. So making it regular would take away the significance. It would just be another tourist thing to do, another visitor's thing to do, which would be fine, but it would take away the significance. But maybe every 50 years so that every generation would have the opportunity to do that if they wanted to. Because it skipped it skipped the greatest generation, basically, from giving them that opportunity.
What did you observe from the standpoint of the sentinels and the military personnel there that were there, actually hosting? It's not a good word to put it, but those that were actually working the event.
Well, I mean, I've been to the Tomb of the Unknown many times since I've lived here and worked in the area, but it never ceases to move me when I watch that ceremony as many times as I've seen it. And I always make sure that I take any visitors. That's one of the first things I make sure that they do. So I don't want to say that there's any difference with the flower laying, but it was still special to be closer to these people, if that makes sense, physically closer to them. But they're there and they're professional and they're doing a job. So I don't want to say they're invisible, but they're doing a really good job doing what they're doing, and they're so professional. And I guess I could say that I was aware that they were there, but I wasn't aware that they're there. Maybe shouldn't admit that, but I know they're special folks.
Right.
So.
Well, I would say that if you were to ask them, it wasn't about them. So if they could blend in a little bit into the background.
There you go.
That's probably,
yeah, it's not about them, and I think that's the whole point.
Right.
So, right.
The reason we're doing something like this is so we can record and preserve your thoughts, your experiences from that day. What's a message that you want to send somebody who might watch this in 100 years?
Goodness. Oh, geez. Well, I go back to saying that I feel very lucky that I was at the right place at the right time, and to be able to lay that flower. It's so hard to put into words. It was so significant, and I felt it because the crowd, even though we were in a hurry, the crowd was able to, everybody that laid the flower had a little space. So somebody walked up and laid it, and then the next person. So you're there by yourself, too, laying that flower. And it was such an honor. And again, it was also representing those who couldn't do that. Not only my ancestors, but then again, thinking about it, that generation that greatest generation that didn't have the opportunity to do that too, but sacrificed a lot. So it was just special. It was just a special thing to do. So I hope that, I'm positive that 100 years from now or 50 years from now, the Tomb of the Unknown, Arlington Cemetery, will still be here. It might be totally full by that time. It will still be here. I do believe people will still come to honor those that made the ultimate sacrifice. And I hope that anybody that has the opportunity to present a flower and lay a flower grabs it, if they're in the right place at the right time, or they make a special trip to come here to do that. So.
One more question for you. You served in the military.
I did.
For many years. You continue to serve. Why is it important, do you think, for people to serve their country?
Why is it important for people to serve their country?
Because many don't. I mean, we take it for granted.
Correct. Many do not. The reason I struggle answering that question is because I grew up in a military family. So I was surrounded by that service. So it was almost second nature to consider that as an option when I was trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. So it's always been an honor to be associated with the military in whatever capacity, dependent, active duty, and retired. And I try to get the message out to folks who've never served. And honestly, I was not around people who had not served or didn't even know people who had been in the military till I went to college. Because up till that point in time, I lived in military communities. And so that's when my eyes were open that there were a lot of people out there who hadn't served, didn't know very much about the military. So again, I feel very honored that I was able to serve my country in that way. And I feel it's my duty, among other things, to educate those who have not served as to what the military is all about. You know, honestly, the good, the bad, the ugly, but the honor and the service that we do.
Well, on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Museum, I thank you for sitting down and talking to us.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your service.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You bet.